welcome to Oh Brother, a podcast of three brothers trying to figure it all out. With your hosts, Brandon, Collin, and Aaron. On this week's show, wearing sandals on purpose. Ahoy!
Ahoy!
I just found a receipt in my pocket that I need to keep. Oh no.
Well, that means you haven't washed it yet, so you're good.
Good. Hold on, I need to put it in my folder so I don't lose it. Okay, we're good. We're all fine.
Okay.
We're ready. Ha ha! That's how you run a business, friends.
Right.
Just randomly find receipts in your pockets. And
find things in your pockets and go, oh snap.
That was supposed that is important. That's important. You'd think I'd learn. There was a time, and there still may come a time in my life where, for some reason, given things that I was filing and paperwork that I was using and needing, I had to show proof of, like, quote unquote, last year's tax return, not tax returns, but property taxes. Yeah, that I had to show last year's property taxes like 17 times in one. That was obviously exaggeration. Everybody.
That's really odd.
Yeah, and of course it was like, okay, I've got to take these, I've got to get this document, and then I have to go, I've got to put it in this file, and then I would lose it, and then someone else would be like, hey, well, I need to see your paid property taxes, and I'd be like, great, I'll go to my oh, it's not, so I'd have to go back to the courthouse, wait in line at the bursars, not the bursars, but whatever, the people there,
whatever, yeah,
whatever. I had to pay them money, so it's basically the bursars, and get my copy, and oh my gosh, and they were just like, you can request this online, and I'd say, every time I try, it says for me to come in because it doesn't recognize any of my information, and they'd go, oh, well, thanks for coming in.
You're like, yeah, I would, but it's broken.
Thanks.
I do this frequently. I say things to myself like, tell myself these little lies, like, I'm going to put it right here so I don't forget where I put it. And then I think sometimes I'm too clever with myself, right? I'm like, especially at work, right? At school, I'm like, I'm going to put it in this cabinet so I can find it again. And then, like, when I need it again, I'm like, where is that? Like,
oh, man, it is so...
I do it all the time.
Right? Like Aaron, do you lose stuff? Is that just me and Brandon?
So I've actually gotten better at keeping things organized.
Whoa, look at you over here.
Now I have like a legit little folder thing that I have for like all my really important documents. Because I know, number one, like applying to a school and just like all the forms you need for like work and stuff.
Oh,
like
sure.
Job wise, like, oh, you need W-2 and like all that stuff. And it's like, it's kind of a pain. So instead of having to hunt things down, I just have everything that's deemed important in just kind of one big folder that I have for everything. And so I just keep stuff there so I don't have to worry about it later.
Aaron,
and then I don't know how much I'm gonna have to deal with like classroom wise. Whenever I have to get in, so yeah, we'll see.
Aaron, what are you playing?
I'm trying not to die in Mario. Damn it! Sorry,
it's hard.
A little bit loud, and also
okay.
like
I was like intently listening to you, but obviously insanely distracted to the background sounds of like, what is that?
Sorry, got a little switch here, so
it's all good. No worries. So yeah, I do that with like, okay, when I say I obviously mean Susan. Yes. Do that for like important like stuff at home, right? We have like a spot and a folder in like in the closet or whatever, but like in my personal life with just like things where I go, oh, I should remember that. And I'm going to put it right here. Gone. Never to be found again.
Nice.
So yeah, you're not the only one that does that. It's all right.
Okay. Yeah. No. Anyway, it was just I have them over here to the right, and sometimes they just don't make it. That's fine, and I just have to go and find copies of them sometimes.
That's all right.
Sometimes I'm not. But
yeah,
I have been reading the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe to the kids at bedtime.
Wow, what a uplifting and happy bedtime story you have chosen for your children.
Well, it's one of those things of like you don't remember like how long it takes to like get to the good part because you forget that in the middle of the beginning of the story is like way into the end of the like the dark times in Narnia. Sorry, spoilers for this people listening. But yeah,
spoilers for C.S. Lewis' seminal 70-year-old work.
I don't. Every day someone's born who hasn't seen the Flintstones. So,
True. I've only read one of the books. I read. Well, we talk more about that later. You go ahead.
That's fine. Anyway, no, and I have just been. It's been good. Yeah, it's been a lot of very nice discussion, and because I have all these books that I want to read with my children, and I'm trying to figure out, obviously, like being very patient to like be age appropriate stuff and not rush things. So Lion, Witch, Wardrobe was like, it's actually for ages 7 to 10 was what it was written for.
Yeah,
and so like we're right there, right? Like we're good.
Yeah, fine. 5 and 6, right?
It's 6 and 4. It's fine. And so we're just diving in. We read one chapter a night and leave plenty of time before we, have to go to sleep. So if anything's scary, or anything is concerning, we can have conversations about it.
Man, from what I remember about the beginning of that book, they must have just been like it's going to take like 70 years to get anywhere, right? Like it's not
pretty drab. It's pretty.
It's not
dry. Literally, it's not the best. Not the fastest clip. That's what I'll say.
How many of them are there?
5, 6.
I legitimately don't know the answer. So I read the first one in the 4th grade and was not interested at all, which is weird because like I like fantasy things, right? Even then, but I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first one, right? And was like, nope. I don't know.
Sorry, 7. And here's what's weird.
7, did you say?
7.
Oy!
So, in order, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, The Voyage at Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, The Horse and His Boy, The Magician's Nephew, and The Last Battle. What is weird about how Narnia, the Chronicles of Narnia is told is they're told from the point of view of a storyteller. And so some chapters, it'll say, and now I suppose you're wondering what's happening to Edmund while the others were talking. Well, presently, Edmund is walking across, like, it's weird how it's told. Yeah,
that's true. It'd be like if you read The Princess's Bride, but it was just Peter Sellers talking to you the whole time, right? Like,
pretty much. Exactly. Peter Sellers it's just me. I'm Peter Sellers.
Oh, nice.
It turns out
hey, just one more thing. Sorry, it was a very bad Columbo impression. I apologize.
I have never heard a good Columbo impression, if we're just being very real.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. And so I've been reading through that, and it's been very good. I've been really enjoying this. We're starting to get some parts, and also pausing and being like translating words, because I know as soon as I read a word, they're going to immediately ask me what it is. So now I just pause and say that this, and then keep reading. Well, like they were really confused for when at the beginning the White Witch, again spoilers, pulls up and it says she rode upon a sled pulled by a reindeer. And Lillian was like, "What's a sled?" Like a sleigh. Like, so then she's like, "Well, why didn't they just say sleigh?" Because that's not the word he wanted to use. She just goes,
"Because he's
okay.
C.S. Lewis. That's not how he rolls."
Exactly. So we're having to do that, and it's also I also appreciate it because it is such a crash course in like mythical creatures and lore because nothing.
That's true.
Nothing is explained. Literally nothing. Nothing. Like you meet a fawn within like the second chapter, third chapter, and it's just like it is a thing, and it mentions like whenever Edmund comes into the castle, all the creatures that he sees. It just lists names, right? And it doesn't describe them at all. There's no like, so it's like I don't know what my kids are envisioning while I'm saying these words, but I'm because I conjure images, but they don't, because they don't know what any of them look like. So it's been that's been fascinating too, of just like we've talked about this in world building, of like you get thrown into it, and this would be very different. It was like Edmund looked at ogre, and an ogre is the blah 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 blah, and it was like,
that's horrid when they do that too, though. Like that's the worst when you just exposit at me like the whole time. Like, gross. Don't do that. It's bad writing. But like that brings up an interesting question just about like the world of C.S. Lewis, right? Like, when did he write these things? Let me see. Because like my question is, did he? Okay, 1950s, right?
I'm
so
sorry.
1950s.
Sorry, Brent. We are going to get so many letters.
It's fine.
You said care. Peter Sellers. You meant Peter Falk.
Oh yeah, I meant Peter Falk.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So stop the letters. Bring back your carrier pigeon. Bring it back.
Yeah. I meant Falk.
It's Peter Falk. Okay.
My bad. As soon as I said it, I was like, that's not right. But I couldn't think of his actual name, so I just went with it.
Okay.
Anyway, so he wrote these things in the 1950s.
Yes.
Right? So, do you think that children in the 1950s knew about Greek mythological creatures because it was like a part of culture? Or do you think C.S. Lewis was an old man who knew what it was and just assumed other people would know? Or do you think he was thinking, it's magical, it doesn't matter, go. I'm just going to put this name down here. Right? Because like a lot of times, like when you read stuff that old people write for like kids, you can tell that they have no idea what's happening. You know, like they're just like assume that kids know things, but they don't, you know? Or is it just like, oh yeah, it's magical, these are magical, it doesn't actually matter if they know what they are or not, I'm just going to use the name and go with it, right? Like, because it's fantasy, blah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say that because, I don't know, 50 years ago, oh no, gosh, 70 years ago.
Yeah, that was a longer time now.
This is, that aged me real bad.
I know, right? That's right.
Like the 70s they're still 30 years ago, and then you're like,
yeah,
oh,
right.
Oh,
they are.
God.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say that they probably had more connection to them then, especially written over in great English, schoolhouses.
That's true,
right? Like that's also a different audience of like 50 years ago in the United States. 50 years ago in English schoolhouses, probably did know more about that literature.
I don't know. I'm just like, that was just a thought I had while I was pondering that. Like,
yeah.
I wonder if he expected them to know what that was, or if it didn't matter, or like, okay, so like last week we were watching this game show thing. I don't remember what it's called, but it was on TV, and it's like it's some new game show where like it's like a team, it's like a trivia show, but it's like a grandson, or it's like a grandchild and a grandparent together, and like they ask the kids questions that the grandparent should know, and then like the other way around, right? So like if you were the grandkid, you would only get questions that were like from the 70s through the 50s, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And then like they asked the grandparents about like Drake and Nintendo, right? But the questions, you could tell that the questions were written by people in their late 20s because they were showing like name this portable game system, and it wasn't a Nintendo Switch like Aaron is modeling for us right now.
Oh,
it was a Sony PSP.
Oh yeah,
a thing that was a big deal in like 2010 when the writers were children, right?
yes.
So they're not in touch with current children things.
Well, no,
it's like what they experienced as a kid. So I'm imagining C.S. Lewis just like in a British schoolhouse, right? Like getting his hand smacked by some like cranky old lady, like copying lines about Greek mythological creatures. And he knew all about them when he was 16 or when he was like in 6th grade. So he is imagining that 6th graders nowadays should know exactly what he knew back then too. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Aaron, do you have experience? Have you ever read any of the Chronicles of Narnia?
Not the Chronicles of Narnia, but I definitely feel that's kind of how it is with like the Dune series. Sci-fi, it's like, oh, you should clearly know what this is. Blah. I have spent more time actually looking things up than reading the book because it just mentions something and you're like, but it's not anything. It's one of those things where it's building the world, but doesn't explain what else is in the world unless you've either read the other books or like the encyclopedia. So I'll like a word will pop up and I'll be like, well, crap, what does that mean? And so like, well, who are these people? And so I've spent most of my time doing that. I'm also the same person that hates like The Great Gatsby, and so I haven't read like any of those quote unquote
exposition though, right?
Yeah, like those quote unquote classic novels. Of the only time that I
except
read,
for The Outsiders. Dun-dun-dun.
Well, yeah, like I read the whole thing. Come on now. The only time that I truly read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was 4th grade Mrs. Queen's class. She had the audiobook, and apparently some famous person was like reading it, and we were supposed to follow along. And I was like, this is kind of stupid. Like there's a closet and they go in it and then it's a different place. Like, and then the movies came out, which I think Mimi took us to. And I was like, oh, that's the thing that I quote unquote read in 4th grade all those years ago. And so like, I didn't really get it, although kind of that same trope with mystical creatures and, fantasy a few podcasts ago. It's like, oh, it's just another fantasy movie. Oh, it's just another fantasy book. And so I never like truly got into it. And like, oh man, the author's like really cool. Like, oh, this is like revolutionary at the time or blah, 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 blah. So for me, I never got into those kinds of books. But coming across a book that was just like uber super confusing and kind of more of a droll than anything was Dune. I'm attempting to power through it as best as I can. But that's kind of the only thing that comparatively that I would have.
No, that makes sense. Like it's one thing, I think, whenever you make up your own creature for your book or whatever, like if we're talking about creature mythologies, right? So like in Dune, right, if they make up their own thing, right, or in like Star Wars and like, oh, it's this thing, or even like the Wheel of Time when they, they're like, oh, here's a Trolloc. Like, okay, well, you clearly made that up. So the fact that I don't know what it is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But when you're going to be like a centaur, a fawn, right? When you're transporting existing mythological creatures from one mythology into another one.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like it's a little, I don't know. Maybe it's because I already know what that thing is. It's weirder, you know? And then the fact that they don't like talk about it is kind of odd because you're like, because my brain is going, why is this Greek mythological creature in a closet in England? Right? Like, I don't understand.
I think a lot of, I had a point. Where was I going with this? Crap, come back to me. Yep.
Again, a thing I do a lot, right?
Oh.
But like when you transport them, It's like, and there's, some things, I guess it depends on how it's presented to you, right? Because, sometimes when people say elf, right, if they don't give me any other context, I'm going to think one thing, but then they might be like, oh, actually, it's this, right? Or like, because you see elves like everywhere. They've just been co-opted by everything from like Tolkien to Warcraft to Skyrim. They're just everywhere, and they're all different, but like you kind of know what you're getting into, right? Mm-hmm. Someone says dwarf, you're like, okay, I kind of know what that is. But then like those are like 100% made up fantasy tropes that are like accepted as modern fantasy things. And then when you're like fawn, what?
Yeah.
This is a fantasy trope from many, like 2,000 years ago. They're just dropping down on me now. Like, what the heck?
So yeah, this is what got me thinking about a lot of things over the past. We've been doing this, I guess, over a week now, of why reading broadly and reading. For me, I really think reading fantasy books is really beneficial because it takes you not just. I mean, it really does stretch you in having to imagine worlds that don't and physically cannot exist. And I think like that's really important and part of being able to create new ideas or come up with explanations for things or give examples or tell different stories as a person and just as an individual for things. And by reading, I mean, let's just be real. Like, reading is good. Like that's all we should all be reading.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Like, okay, yeah, whoo, didn't see that one coming. But I think it kind of depends. And I know when we were going through getting Lillian reading and interesting, obviously, education specialists, doctors were like, it doesn't matter what they read as long as they're reading. But I think once you get reading, I think it does impact you on what you read, not just that you're reading. And I think it is important to read broadly across genres and type and everything. Because even I have noticed that as I've moved away from reading as much fantasy as I used to, and I read other things now, it's I go back and I read fantasies and they're much more impactful, at least for me. Maybe that's just because I started reading in fantasy book and stuck there for so long. But I do think they're a very important type of literature for people to read.
Well, I think they're good because like fantasy and sci-fi both do this thing where they can tackle like big modern like social questions and problems, but in like a weird way where like you don't like not like weird, but like in an indirect type of way,
Yes.
And it's not like a direct comparison. So if you read like a modern fiction novel, it's like exactly 1-to-1 of like what's the real world is like.
Right.
And the fantasy escapism kind of allows you to experience these same themes, but in a different setting that's like more interesting.
For sure.
And sci-fi too. I know that they get lumped in together, right? Anytime you go to a bookstore, there's like the sci-fi / fantasy section just sort of like over there, right? And they get kind of lumped in together, but they both do that. They both can do that well. The problem with fantasy sometimes is that there's a lot of bad out there, and it's not like there's like just normal generic like bad every kind of genre, right? Like I've read lots of books that are just like you get to the end, you're like, I don't even know what this book was about. It was just a book that I read, and it was just sort of like trash throwaway book.
Yeah.
And the thing about fantasy is sometimes I find that it's real easy to do that in fantasy because like we've talked about before, like the overuse of fantasy tropes is just like so abhorrent, right? Like blah, that it just like can really be formulaic and boring. And then you miss the point of the interesting stories that you can tell. Right. So that is the big like thing to watch out for. Is that because like they can do that? It's you just gotta be on guard, right? You gotta be careful.
Well,
right?
I think they can try and be too. They go, oh, look at the fantasy. Like, how am I going to say this? I think they can be obtuse or indirect in how they present topics and ideas. What is not fun is whenever they're just like they follow very similar tropes, or it's kind of like a nudge, wink, wink. Hey, look, we're talking about that guy over there, but look, it's an elf. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And you're just like,
yeah.
Oh.
Well, and again, you can do it well, right? Like,
sure.
There's a difference, right? It just depends on the writer and the world that they create around it. You know, you can talk about things like racism in a fantasy novel. That is a fantasy thing, right? There's always a group that is like prejudiced towards a different group, right? And it's framed as like elves, dwarves, something like that, right? And they kind of showcase this problem. They kind of tackle this issue and get you thinking about this kind of thing in like a indirect way, right?
Yeah.
So you can see it's just like another way to think about it, you know. And they can do that with any kind of problem, you know, which is good fantasy. You know what I mean? Like one of the things that can make good fantasy. Other times you just need to be like stabbing a dragon. You know, it's fine. Yeah. That's fine too. You know, it's okay.
Yeah, not everything has to have like this really big, deep-seated
not
meaning.
No, sometimes you just want to read a book. You know what I mean? And I think that's important too. Like, this is the problem that I have, right? I have gotten so like, for a long time, I've just been reading like nonfiction, you know, for work or whatever. And I just like certain nonfiction stories or whatever. But like, I don't read a lot of just like fiction books, you know, and this is a problem that I have because then you get into the middle of this like nonfiction book, right? Let's pretend you're reading Paris 1919, 6 months that changed the world, right? Let's pretend you're reading that. And it's like a 500-page monstrosity about the Treaty of Versailles, you know? It can be a little hard to motivate yourself to keep reading that, right? This is a book you can read. Like nonfiction is different because you can read a chapter or two and then like walk away from it for a while, you know, because it's like there's not a story element really that's like contiguous. I mean, there's signing the treaty, but like, you know what I mean? It's like not so urgent. So
right,
trying to motivate yourself to read can be difficult, and I think that's where having a genre that's your favorite is important, because like you can fall back and just be like, I just want to read this because it's fun and I like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, it's good to have that like you were talking about being well-rounded and reading lots of different types of books. I think if you only ever read one type of book, it gets very boring. At least it does for me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, and I become unmotivated to read. Like, I just don't want to, because it's just the same thing a lot, and I'm like, whatever, blah. And so I think switching it up is good. So if you have some favorite genres, you know, that you can fall back on and say, I just want to read just for fun, and you can pick up a fantasy book and just kind of like read for enjoyment. I think that's really important, right? And like you were talking about, it's about early exposure. It's about what you read as a kid. Like you have these fallbacks, you know what I mean? So if you read sci-fi as a kid, if you went through a big sci-fi phase in middle school, like a lot of people do, like me, sometimes it's just good to go back and read it just because it's fun and you have like a connection to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I did that this week. I was going to talk about this. Look at that. You just brought it up anyway. But like, that's what I did this week to help motivate myself to have all these books. Like, I kind of discovered that my hobby is not reading. It's like book collecting. Right. So,
and is anybody?
No,
are we really?
It really shouldn't be.
Oh my gosh.
There are like 12 billion books around here. And I'm like, I need to read these. Right. And I have a bunch that are like half read because they're nonfiction. Or I have so many nonfiction books. I read like half of them and I just like read like 4 books at a time, which is weird. And Susan makes fun of me. But like,
fine.
In order to help motivate myself, I went back to a classic genre, the mystery crime genre, right? Pulling out the family tradition of mystery crime novels.
Okay. Yeah.
I bought this book. It was I bought it online. I was just like looking. I was like, I need something that's like, because my problem with reading nonfiction is my attention span. I need something that will hold my attention and keep me thinking about the book sometimes. So I was like, well, obviously it has to be crime, right? Because it's like a mystery and you're like engaged and watching it. So I bought this book. It's called The Tenant by Katrin Engberg. It's like she's a Danish writer. So like Danish crime fiction is like a big genre apparently.
So it was not Sue Grafton?
No, it was not.
Okay.
Yeah, surprise. But yeah, that's what I went the family tradition route of mystery crime novel.
This is fascinating. We have getting the kids into also reading Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys, and Lillian like loves these so much. Like before we start reading, we always recap what has happened up until the story, up until the chapter stopped at, and then we talk about what we think is going to happen in the coming chapter, which is always my favorite thing to do when you're reading those kind of book, novels of like kind of starting to project ahead. And you can already tell how she's starting to pick up on some tropes or things, or like doing the whole like, well, but the teacher said this thing, and so what if they did this thing, and whatever. So it was it's been a lot, been really cool to do that. So have you been how have you been enjoying the ones that you've been reading?
It's really good, right? It's really good so far. I'm about halfway through. Right? I've been splitting my time of like, I'm using it to reward myself. So I've been reading some of my nonfiction to like motivate myself, and then I read this thing right later. So it's really good so far. I really like it. It's pretty interesting. Got the old twisty turny things going on here. The book basically, if I summarize the back, takes place in Denmark, right? Like I said, Danish.
Sorry, who's the author again?
Her name is Katrin Engberg. Yes, I'm gonna go with that. It's called The Tenant. It's nice. It's very green. So, but like, basically, it's. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but like, there's a lady. There was a murder in this apartment building, and the murder matches an unpublished manuscript of this lady who's writing a crime novel. Right? So this lady that also lives in the building is writing a crime novel about a murder victim, and the lady in her building gets murdered in the same way as in the unpublished manuscript of her story. Dun dun dun.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, so it's pretty good, right? It's a good premise to go by. That's all you need to know. Now you're in, right? You're like, okay, I'll read that. So that's what I've been doing this week. That's what I've been trying to motivate myself to be reading more, not just playing Forza and racing cars, right? Trying to do some other stuff.
Airman, what's your go-to reading when you read? If you read, do you hate reading? It's okay. It's fine. I mean,
so I know my usual go-to, and this is kind of the worst thing, and I know I've sent you Snapchats of this, Collin, is like when I go to Barnes & Noble and it like the history section. that's usually my go-to. When I was younger, I used to love reading a lot of those like sports books about like, you know, how like a coach or a certain player got to where they are and like their journey. You know, sci-fi, I love, you know, Warhammer 40K. I also have a lot of Warhammer fantasy books. The one I'm reading now, where is it? It's King Leopold's Ghost, about the
that's a good one.
Right?
I have that one.
King Leopold of Belgium and the exploitation of Congolese in the
the
Congo
DRC,
of Africa.
the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yeah,
the big one. And so of just kind of how like it played out and like why, which is not usually talked about a lot in history. So I've been reading that because it's captivating to see like, wow, this is crazy that this happened. This didn't really happen that long ago.
No, it did
and
not.
So that's the crazy thing that I've been reading. It's more of just like, and I know typically my reading changes, especially when it gets closer to like school, because I'm like, oh, I got to read something, you know, U.S. history related. And then like in the summer, it's like, I want to read fantasy. I want to read, you know, sci-fi. And then like the moment, you know, July rolls around, I'm like, oh, well, history, you say? Yes. So my kind of style changes depending on when the time of year is.
No, I agree. I'm the same way. Like, I feel like it's hard for me to balance like reading for like work, just, you know, little things, even like papers or articles or books about the subject matter that I teach, just to keep informed and keep up on stuff and like learn more so I can teach the kids better, and like reading for fun. You know, it's difficult balance to strike. And that's why I went with this genre. I pulled this genre out of the old hat because I haven't read one in a while. And so it's like, oh, yeah.
I will say, when I was in school, those certain kind of books that you had to like, you get a week to read this, and then, you know, we'll all discuss it. I mean, prime example, Great Gatsby. I will just load that book until the day I die. If you gave me a book and told me to read it, I was not going to read it. I just had zero interest into whatever you think that I think that I would like. More than likely, I would not like it because it was just awful. So a lot of those times, like, people are like, oh, we have to read this for points. I'm like, no, that's okay. I'm not going to, because your taste in book is terrible. And so, yeah, I just, a lot of those books, especially in school, I couldn't tell you, you know, the books like The K or things like that. The things that like we had to read, especially for like our book, you know, quotas or whatever we had. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. It's you're really bad at picking books for me, so I'm just not going to read it. Dang.
Yeah, I have unfortunately been reading more and more like business book, which have not been fun. So I've been trying to find the ones that aren't like, because it's such a terrible world of drudgery and monotony and annoying people writing books. So trying to find.
You say it sounds real bad.
It's really bad. So trying to find things that are written like kind of that are business-y, but not by someone who runs a business. I know that sounds bad, but one of the ones that I found that I'm really enjoying, it's called Anti-Fragile: Things That Gain from Disorder. It's actually written by a mathematician and statistician, as he looks at the world and goes, why do some things break and other things don't break? Basically is his premise. And he comes at it, and as I've been reading this, I've been going, oh, like, there are a lot of biological principles that we know of why ecosystems are robust, and what happens when you throw an organism into a static environment versus a turbulent environment versus something that's too turbulent, and why, like, medically, like, your bones and your body is stronger whenever you lift weights and whenever you run and you exert and you use your body, it actually does get stronger, like bone density and things like that, from like that disorder and impact that you put on it actually strengthens it. And so now, how do we take some of these principles and apply it to building things that last and actually need and benefit from a little bit of chaos? It's been a fascinating read so far.
I think this is the kind of important thing about reading broadly as well, is because there's lots of lessons that you can learn from stuff like that apply to other things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not like to learn about teaching practices. You don't just need to read teaching books.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
You have to read other books, and the principles that are in there cross apply. And that's really important, I think, to get a broader view kind of on how things work. You know what I mean? Like, so when you read broader, it can help you make these like cross subject connections. You know what I mean? Like, you can read a book about math and statistics and then be like, oh, hey, that reminds me of this like biology book like you're talking about that I read, you know? Or I can look at this business book. I can look at this like leadership management book, right? Or just like these principles, right? And like I can apply that to how I organize and run my classroom, right? Because like some of these things are they cross over. You know, there's a big crossover there. And so I think that's broadening out is really good for that, because you make new connections and you can come up with new ideas and practices and things to do that way. That kind of make, you know, you get these like new ideas about stuff and how to do it that way, instead of just like only one point of view from a person that is like a teacher and they just are stuck and they say, oh, do this only. Like,
yeah.
But
so that's an amazing point of, you as a person will never get any new ideas if you just read about people telling you how to do something or how they did something. I had an advisor when I was in graduate school who she studied ecosystems and community organization, of how do organisms basically organize and structure themselves at a community level. So, you know, you've got populations and then groups of populations make a community in a geographic region. She wanted to know, how do these work in a hierarchical way and structure themselves and kind of balance each other out? She basically spent all of her time reading like French philosophers and, and like all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's like, really like Voltaire is all over that, right? That's what you need to read.
No. So I think I've told you the story, but her entire PhD dissertation when she was going through school was based on some philosopher, Greek philosopher, that says you never step in the same stream twice. And he wrote that to mean like, because the stream is always moving, right? And it was like, because the world is already always moving around you. And so she was like, I wonder if that's statistically true. How far do you have to step in a stream before you reach a different biotic community? So
not very far, probably.
No, not very far at all, is what she found. And like, she went down to like, so it was just fascinating. It was like, yeah, that's where those amazing ideas come from of how things are connected. But you have to be looking for those, right? You can't just sit there and wait for that. And so, you know, I know both of you are really big readers. How do you think that came about in your lives?
I think I don't know. I think part of it is that, as I alluded to earlier, the family tradition of the mystery crime novel. Listeners, our grandmother and mother both were voracious readers of crime fiction.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It was kind of distressing how many random paperback crime novels both of them had. Like, so I think just kind of like, I would say kind of being exposed to books just in general, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I know that like when we were little, mom and dad both like read, and then that stuff. And then like, I guess it's just sort of that finding something that you like to read. Yeah. And then just reading more of it. I would say one of my early memories of being like wanting to read things is I got a hold of some Boxcar Children books in like the second grade. And I read like a bajillion of those things. Right. For whatever reason, I just connected with that series of books, and I really liked the sort of like mystery aspect, you know? I was kind of like mystery light, you know, the Boxcar Children, like whatever. But like, I just latched on to reading that, and I enjoyed reading that, and I just read a lot of them, you know? And I don't really know how long I did that. Probably, well, I don't really know. Second and third grade, I guess. And then in fourth grade, I remember we had to read a lot of books in school, and we read a lot of like, fourth grade is the year of reading books that like scarred me for life, right? So I read like The Bridge to Terabithia in fourth grade, right? We read like The Taste of Blackberries, right? All these books where like everybody dies. It's all like super depressing and sad. And then like, I think one of my friends, I think that's what happened. I think one of my friends was reading some fantasy books, and I started reading those, and then some like random Star Wars fiction, right? In like fifth, sixth grade, I kind of got into that stuff. And then kind of went from there. I don't remember reading just a whole lot in high school. Just like for fun. Sure. But like, or college really. But then after college, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to start reading some more. And I read like a whole bunch of, look at my bookshelf here. We have a ton of random junk that I've read. Yeah, kind of similar stuff, kind of adventure, thriller, crime, classic literature, and like kind of expanded from there. But I think that's that kind of the early exposure is just being around people that read, just like walking into a room and seeing somebody reading a book and being like, oh, that is an option for fun, right? Like, I think that's kind of where my reading background kind of comes from. Sure. I don't know. Aaron, what do you think?
So I know a lot for me is when I think like one of the first times that I truly like got into reading was when Collin would read to me those I can't remember what books they were. On the Way Up to South Dakota. No cell phones, no MP3 players, no, we definitely didn't have the CD player, and then it's kind of the whims of father music selection.
So no music.
Yeah, so no music.
You mean the music of the wind rushing by the windows?
Yes. We would have the back seat of the Suburban like down so we could like lay out and stretch out, and Collin would read to me those little I can see the stupid face of one. It's like not a time travel book, but it's like
the Time Warp Trio.
Time
Is that what it was?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think you read something else to me, but being back in like the car for what was it, 12 hours or whatever it was, and just like sitting back there reading like oh, this is like super like cool and how like interesting this is and like that kind of stuff. And then I know that I was also perpetuated by Mimi, who like every chance we got going into Springfield, it's like, can we go to Barnes and Noble real quick? And I know that kind of definitely got older of like, I definitely remember like having a lot of fun with this when I was younger, and how cool it is to be like, oh, I'm getting to do what I did for when I was younger. And then like the other big thing is when Collin made me read the Harry Potter book before I could go see the movie. of like, oh, but you just watch the movie, and then like reading it and like, oh, this is like way better than what we're about to see. And then I remember watching the first film, and yes, it was super cool, but I was like, but like the book taught me like so much more, and like how come I didn't do that? And so I think that's kind of where it really started for me, anyways. Or if I had to like put a pinpoint on it, I think it would be probably about around that time.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Brandon just like threw my brain sideways at the mere mention of Time Warp Trio.
I have the book on my shelf right now. I'm looking at it.
Oh,
I think it's our copy from when we were kids too.
It is.
Is one of them the one that like there's a cow on it?
Yeah, the good, the bad, and the goofy.
Yeah, and then like the first like true series that I got into that like reading about kids that are kind of my. Holding on.
Did you say hold on? Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you said hold on. Was the Magic Treehouse series.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like the first, like, yo, I could like really get behind this, and like, where are they going to go like next week kind of thing. So yeah, Time Warp Trio. I remember Collin reading those to me and being like, it was more of like, yo, it was like someone who like reads this to me, like, oh, it's pretty dope. And so yeah, I think that if I had to put like a marker on it, it would be probably like that time period for me, anyways.
I'm pretty sure that The Knights of the Kitchen Table is genuinely one of the most hysterical and funny books that I've ever read in my entire life. That book is hilarious. Like, oh, it's so good. I forgot about the Magic Treehouse. Those are pretty good books for kind of young kids. That's like two of Aaron's favorite things together: reading books and like history, like blam, combined.
I remember the Pompeii book.
That one's good. I think I have that one in my classroom actually.
And then like, and then I know the one book that truly, I was like, this is the greatest book of all time. When I was younger, was Bunnicula, and I know we talked about it.
Yes.
Here, and I'm like, yo, this is like, do they have this like everywhere? Is like, is this on Oprah's bestseller list? Like, because it should be. That book was the one I was like, yo, like this, if it's not big, it's going to be kind of thing.
Turns out it is big. Like, it's a big deal. It's humongous.
Sorry, I had to dive out there to go get a dog to stop barking. I'm going to back up to the Time Warp Trio. I don't know. It's one of the first memories I have of reading a book and belly laughing.
So because legitimately,
it's so incredibly funny. Whenever it's the night at the kitchen table or something, whatever that is.
Yeah, the Nights of the Kitchen Table.
Nights of the Kitchen Table.
It's the best one in my opinion.
It doesn't get better than that for that 4 series. That made me laugh so hard, and it was just a core memory for me of not just being exposed to books, because obviously, our parents were readers, and so we had books on shelves randomly. They kind of like were laying a strewn about the house. We would go to Barnes and Noble, so we had time to like peruse and look at stuff while Mom was going finding things. And
we would also go to the library.
Yeah, I know. Going to the library and
just the public library, the old Brentwood Public Library is the one we used to go to the most often in my memory, because it was right there. It was close to Dad's work. Right.
We would stop by there, and go say hi to him. Go grocery shopping in the area.
Well, yeah, there used to be a grocery store right there.
Yeah.
Like right by it. That building's not even there now, I don't think. But like, there used to be a grocery store there.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me because that was my answer too. Of like, why do I read, or why I have that connection with them? Because they were just like around, right? Like it was very much like they around.
Yeah,
we were encouraged. We were encouraged to go and find them. And like, if we picked up a book, it was like, okay, like there was some discussion about buying it or not, obviously, but like we were encouraged to find things that interested us. And they were gifted to us too. Like we were gifted books. Some of them had scrawl in the front covers that remain unlegible to this day.
It's true. That's true.
But like they were just around, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. Because I know, like, I have such a, like I said, like the Time Warp Trio, like that book came out in 2001, and I still remember laughing.
Did it really?
Back and forth. Yeah,
dang.
2001. I still remember belly laughing at that and just how hilarious that was. And then everything else since then, books that make you laugh and cry, or that are suspenseful and make you angry or whatever, like they really do not just take you places of, like we started talking like fantasy and sci-fi and those things, but they make you feel things as well, which is what I always take away from a book, is like, how did I feel while reading this book?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of the connection that you have to it, right? Like, how do I, because that means you've connected with it in some way. Like, if you have a feeling at all, like, you're doing good, right? Like, your feeling could be like, oh man, I don't like this at all, but it's because it's not like that feeling doesn't just come from somewhere, right? No, I mean, nowhere. Like, it's for a reason, and it's made an impact on you and connected with you somehow. Like, some books do that better than others, right? Like, some books make you like laugh uproariously, and some books like are not funny at all. Some books are really interesting and insightful, and some are just like intriguing and interesting, right? Like, there's a whole gambit to run here of these interesting things, and like that's what's so good about reading, is like there's literally infinite possibilities of what you can read, right? Like, depending on your mood, depending on how you're feeling, whatever. But they are these like memories that you have, right? Around books. Like, I just had another one. I remember those, like, do you remember these? Like, we had these big hardback books about like animals or something, right? Do you remember these things? Like, I don't know what they're called. I think they're in the closet still, probably.
They're not gray, are they?
No. Those are different.
Yeah.
That's the series. That was Mom's series. There's like fairy tales and stuff. That's that one.
Okay.
No, they were almost like
coffee table books?
No, they were smaller than that. They were like these books. They were kind of tall. They were like skinny, but they were about like animals or something. And we had some of those. And Dad used to read those to us, like for bedtime or whatever. He was like read out of them and stuff. I don't know what they are, but I remember something about, there was like it was like nonfiction too. It was like pictures of like actual like raccoons and stuff. So I don't know, like there's a raccoon one. I feel like there's one about water animals, right? This mystery book series.
Okay, I'm calling Dad tomorrow and asking.
Yeah, like, Dad, question.
Very important.
Because there's a picture somewhere of like him reading a book to, I think it's you, trying to make you take a nap, and Dad is napping, and you're totally like looking at the books.
Makes sense.
That's a backfire, ultimate backfire of the year, right? Like. But I think, it's just that exposure, that time spent of like, we're just going to the library. We're just going to like hang out at the library and look for a book and just get it. Right. Like,
yeah. Oh.
This is why, also, the Brentwood Library is why, in my mind, when you say the word library, I immediately think of Brown. Right. Like, just Brown.
Such a Brown building.
Imagine the most 1980s library, listeners, in your mind. That's it. That's what it is.
Was that? I'm trying to think which one that one is. Is that like the one where it's like a long? Is it kind of like very blocky?
Yes, it's brick. No, it's off of Glenstone.
Glenstone and Seminole. Seminole. Yeah, it's right across from the
cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very low and long and brick, right? I mean, it was. I don't know what it is now.
They've done a complete reno. Not surprising.
I imagine because Springfield Public Libraries did all their buildings, I think. Yeah. But this one is like a super 80s. It was super 80s. They had big inside. They had these big like Florida, to my young mind, ceiling. They probably weren't that tall, but like brown and metal bookshelves. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm on the same page now.
Collin in there throwing fits because he can't take like 17 books. You know, look, it's fine.
Look, you know,
yeah, it's fine.
Sometimes you just have to. Oh my gosh, there we go. Hold on. I'm seeing if I can find some old photos.
Oh man.
Anyway, I'll see if I can dig some of those up. Hard to find old photos of things because they get put away so fast.
It's true.
But
no one was thinking about taking a photo of the Brentwood Library in the 90s or early 90s, right? That's not a thing you're doing.
No. But it was renovated like 5 years ago. Like there were photos. Wow. Like it was done pretty recently. Like in the grand scheme of things.
It's the last library that Springfield renovated. They renovated like every one of the billion that was there, except for that one tucked away in the corner.
Yeah. The renovation was completed. What did I say? 5 years ago. It reopened in It was closed and then reopened in 2017. So like,
oh my gosh, man. What I wouldn't give to go inside that brown building again. So great.
Yeah. But I think that's jeez. So anyway, that is fascinating. I really do appreciate that. To hear your connections to books, to reading, and to how that's impacted you, because I know that's been something that is come and gone as I've been, obviously get busy and things come up and go, but it's something that Lillian and Noah now like very passionate about. Like, you will be readers and you will like it. It's gonna be fun. So, anyway, that's cool.
We have to do another book challenge. That's what it smells like here. I have to get one that Aaron is interested in reading this time. Got to get him on board. That's what we got to do. Bookmark that. Get it?
Yeah. I've got this one. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. It's called The Great Gatsby.
No, Aaron's favorite. I heard it's his favorite. He loves.
I'm about to sign off here in a second.
He loves the green light. I know. F. Scott.
Cool.
We'll read a more contemporary one this next time.
Yeah,
more modern.
I can take that at least.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Go to your library, folks. Get a book. Read it. There you go. My takeaway from this.
Yeah, that's true. I think Susan got a library card the other day. I haven't actually ever been into ours. They're building a new one.
Dad went and got a so there's officially a library, some branch. Oh, the Webster County Library branch. Like Webster County has branches of libraries now. And there's one in downtown there. And so he went and got the kids library cards at that place. And so every time we go down now, we have to stop by the library and pick them up. So, like,
nice.
But I have so many memories of, because we use the Springfield Public Library system, obviously, and like that was how I first used their searching databases. And for
oh my gosh, and this horribly old computer. Oh
yes, yeah. And what was it called? Cat. Oh man, this is gonna drive my Cool Cat. Was it Cool Cat?
That sounds familiar. That sounds like a thing.
Where there was like an image of a cat, because it was supposed to be sort of catalog, and you're supposed to go and search for different things, and you could access to EBSCO.
The computerized card catalog.
Yeah, and you could get access to EBSCO host for searching papers and other files.
That's true.
Research stuff, and yeah, man, going down the microfiche films in
man, they only had that at the downtown branch. I remember that. They still had those there when I was in high school because my friend worked at the library.
Oh yeah,
and they still had those monster microfilm machines that you could go and look at. They have those at the Missouri State Library still.
Yeah,
I remember doing one of those things for Boy Scouts where I had to go to the library and like find like an old news article and go down to like.
Did. Yeah.
It was for your birthday, like the newspaper for the year you were born or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh!
Pull a news article for what happens. Yeah,
reeling through that monster while looking at it with your eyes burning as newspapers just like scream by at 1,000 miles an hour from your vision. Man, things are crazy.
Microfiche.
Yeah. Ooh. The space that you save by making them on those little microfilms, you waste by having the machine that reads because it's humongous.
It is. Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Microfiche versus microfilm. The film was the roll. The fiche was the static cards of images that you could put in the little. It looked like a big computer.
Yeah. So it was the film, the big roll that you rolled through in those machines. Yeah. Well, I remember like wheeling that thing.
No, I remember those.
You have to like look in those like weird like viewfinder goggle things, right? Looking like the. Was it that little red toy? Remember that you like click the button and show the pictures on it? It looked like that.
It did. Yeah. I think it's only appropriate that I insert the entry for what microfilm is from Encyclopedia Britannica online. That seems apropos.
Yes, I think so.
I document here in my show notes.
All listeners under the age of 30 are going to be like, what the heck are you talking about?
Oh man, you got the
that's not real.
You got the CD-ROM for Encyclopedia.
Bro, the CD-ROM.
Insert all of the world's knowledge came on a CD.
Yeah, pre-internet, man. That's what's going on.
Learn how to.
I remember having to. So when I was in high school, when I wrote my research papers for junior writing class. That's the year that we did a bunch of research papers. I think we did like 2, maybe. I don't know. And then I did another one my senior. I do have these memories of I had to go to the public library because I was only allowed to have 2 internet sources. That was it. The rest had to be books. So I have these memories of going to the public library and just like setting up on one of those big library tables. And I just had books open around me, right? These big reference books, right? Books about the topic or whatever I was researching, like whatever. And I had my giant stack of like note cards, like just sitting in the library with all these reference books piled on the table. In my mind, it was a lot. I felt like Gandalf. It was probably like 4. But like in my mind, it was a lot. Because some of them were like non-checkoutable, like the big reference books. You could check like the encyclopedias and stuff like that. So you had to go there and like get all your stuff and write all your note cards and sit at the table and do all that stuff.
Copy out the information.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could pay to use the copy machine, but who wants to do that?
Doing that? Nobody's
not me.
Not me.
It's like sitting in the library on a Saturday afternoon, not paying for copy machine. No. So yeah, I have that memory as well. Mm-hmm. Like, because even in the early 2000s, the internet was not allowed, right? 2 internet sources only.
How would you know what's real? Anybody could publish.
Yeah, turns out it's still hard to figure that out. Apparently, we'd have to have been yelling at people for 20 years to be careful about what you read on the internet.
Yeah.
Nope.
Does not work. Fine. What could go wrong?
But yeah, I have this memory of it. When I went to the library center, the new one that they had built, at that time it was new. The one on Campbell,
Yep. That is now.
It was like brand new. And I do remember that like walking in that building versus my old friend, the Brentwood Library. It was a massive difference because it was like light in there, and like, you could see there were windows. There were actually tables. I don't have any memory of tables in the Brentwood Library or a reference section, but I was younger and wouldn't have gone to the reference section, so that's not exactly a complete memory. But like, I don't know.
Fair enough. I think the Brentwood and the other one is where I used to rent want mom to. Yeah, you could rent like the 3 Caballeros from the little VHS section.
Possibly.
Because I always wanted like one of those. Like that was the only reason, because I could never find anything that I truly wanted unless it was like a magazine or something. I always had the VHS section that always had something that I was like, oh, yeah, I could totally like get this from the library.
That's true. My friend worked at the library, like I said, so he would just like borrow DVDs all the time, just like whichever, like didn't matter. Just like this one, boom.
Might as well have access to it. Don't do anything else.
Yeah, just take it, watch it. Okay, put it back. Take it, watch it. Man. So yeah, but I do remember that having to do the research at the actual library. It was crazy, weird times, right? Like not.
Man, I'm going to need to get a copy of the Time Warp Trio to read to kids now. This is...
You do.
Man. Okay.
It's good stuff.
Okay. Have homework.
It's true.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go finish off the night reading a book.
All right.
I'm going to do that.
Reading before bed. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Look at that.
I was going to add, you talk about having books everywhere. I have obtained an e-reader, and that is very bad because I am already a digital hoarder. Anyway. So now it's just like unlimited space to put all the books in the world. I will have all of them.
That's true. Now you're never gonna decide what to read, right? That's the.
No, because you're at night and you're like, I can get it. It's all connected, so I can get on the Wi-Fi with it. I'm such an old. I can get it connected to the internet, and then I can hook it up to my library card, and so I can just like browse their catalog,
and
check out books from the library
forever.
It's like, why would this is amazing? I love this so much.
You just start with A, I guess, and just go down the list.
Work your way down. Exactly. So, anyway, I'm being kept busy.
There you go.
Very good. Very good. Well, you guys enjoy your evening. Don't melt this week, please.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad. It's so, you're never going to believe this. It's so hot.
How hot is it?
I've been wearing sandals. Like on purpose. It's so hot as outside. I can't even. That's how you know it's hot, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a devout tennis shoe wearer only. I'm buzzing out my sandals this week. It's so hot. I can't.
Bad. Oh, it's so bad. Yeah.
That's why we have softball practice at 7 a.m. so we don't have to deal with the heat.
Better than midnight, right? That's a good idea, though. Early morning. It's not bad in the morning. After about 10. Blah.
Don't die from heat exhaustion or heat stroke. And we'll accomplish that task, my friends, and we'll see you again next week.
All right.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.